Right, ladies and gentlemen, the upside of down. It's all about crisis. It's all about South Africa. It's all about the 21st century in South Africa. And it's all about what goes wrong in South Africa when things do go wrong. So, we start the presentation. There we go. Thank you. Now we're on that. South Africa is the home of Chicken Lick, and it's the home of KFC as well, but we're not talking specifically about the fast food companies in South Africa. We're talking about our attitudes towards our lives. We're talking about our attitudes towards ourselves, and how every time an acorn falls on our head, what do we think? We think the sky is falling on our head. You know the story of Chicken Lick, and he walks through the forest, the acorn hits him on the head. He goes around and tells all of his friends that the sky is falling on my head. And as South Africans, we're particularly guilty of doing that. We're beset by acorns. South Africa's like a great big oak forest. And whether it's politics, whether it's money, whether it's political uncertainty, whether it is just whether or not you have any job security, the acorn hits you on the head and it is the end of the world. We are masters, ladies and gentlemen, of indecision and of believing that every time we go to the brink and we stand on the brink of political uncertainty, as we did in December last year when Jacob Zuma, in his wisdom, fired the finance minister, it felt calamitous. But you know what? We're very good in South Africa at doing one thing, and we do it often, so we're well practiced at it. We stand on the brink, we look over the edge, and then we walk away from the edge. And we say, you know what? Not today. We're incredibly good in times of crisis at coming together. And the upside of down, because it was written in the aftermath of the calamity that was December 2015, is all about understanding a far bigger picture of where we've come from, because where we come from tells us about where we are going to. And so many South Africans in December last year didn't understand that history is helpful in us understanding where we come from. These guys don't talk much anymore. They don't really. You can just imagine the conversation that might transpire between them. Thabo, the wise older statesman, might say to Jacob, don't you think it's time that you said goodbye to the people of South Africa? Because so many South Africans in December would have been considering the future of the country. Jacob Zuma didn't seem to understand where it was that we were all going. And that's one of the things that happens in times of uncertainty. But let me just plot for you, please, a series of acorns over a period of 50 years. All of those are inflection points. We start on the far left with Sharpeville. We survived Hendrik Verwoerd. Steve Biko was murdered. We survived P.W. Botha. For goodness sake, there's P.W. Botha. The assassination of Chris Hani. We saw calamity as the global markets melted down in 2008, and we survived Nhlanhla Nene. The very best thing to happen to South Africa in the last 12 months was the sacking of Nhlanhla Nene. Lovely man. I'm sorry that he lost his job. He'll be absolutely fine. Why was it a good thing? Because we reached a critical inflection point. We reached an absolutely critical inflection point. What's the green line about? In 1960, if you had put 1,000 of these big boys, this is a 1960s 1 rand coin. It's got an ounce of pure silver in it. If your parents in 1960, if you were born in 1960, had invested 1,000 of these big boys in the market for you, by the end of the 1960s, that 1,000 rand would have been worth 4,200 rand. By the end of the 1970s, courtesy of compounding and a slow but steady economy, it was worth 20,000 rand. By the end of the 1980s, the tumultuous 1980s, and the graph hasn't even begun moving up yet, it was worth 190,000 rand. And that's through every single bone of crisis and every bit of indecision that we've seen in our country over the last 50 years. And that's before we really hit crisis point. And this guy Bill Meyer really gets us, because you go to a braai, you go to whatever it is that you go to, and everybody is going to be telling you how crap South Africa is. Everybody's going to be telling you how poor you are getting as a result of a depreciating currency. Well, that was until about 2 months ago, until the British really messed up and voted themselves out of the European Union. They will tell you that you're going to stand over the brink. They will tell you that the brink is crumbling. But you know what the crisis brought us? The crisis that was sparked by the events of 9/12, which is a bit like 9/11, just happened in South Africa. It sparked a crisis that in Davos this year, where I was with the finance minister, captains of industry, business and government started talking to each other like they've never started talking to each other in South Africa's modern democracy. And then they came back from Davos and said, you know, we can't just talk amongst ourselves. Let's bring labor into this conversation. And what we're seeing happening in the background of South African society right now is something that is so remarkable, where actually people are doing I don't know, a real coming together for the first time in our modern democracy, which gives me great optimism for that modern democracy as well. So, 1,000 of these big boys in 1961. What are they worth today? For that, you're going to have to book the talk. This is the Upside of Down. Thank you very much.